So, I thought what I might just kind of use as a starting point here, just to share some ideas, is something I read recently from the Israeli historian Yuval Harari, who wrote Homo Deus and he just wrote Nexus. And Harari writes, one thing we've learned about humans over thousands of years is that people often desire the truth to be different from what is. Isn't that interesting? People often desire the truth to be different from what is. And that tells us something about the ambivalent nature of the human person, that there's something about us that's really incomplete and we're very fragile. We kind of blow and we kind of want something. We want truth, but then we don't want, in a sense, what the reality is that we're faced with. And there's something of that even in our election here in the US, and the new president that will be installed with his mega stories and mega stories, that they pose for us sort of a story that is not really real, certainly not the reality of our ongoing evolution. And yet it's very attractive. There's something about us that wants something that is not here. And I think that's also behind the fundamentalists, the kind of religious right that anticipates some kind of you know rapture of some sort or some. Um, and how do we get to the real? I think that's an important question for us in these very complex times because we're living in as we evolve more quickly with technology, we are becoming more interdependent, more complex, and we're having a difficult time navigating self-identity, personal identity, and what we're about as humans and as a collective humanity. And I do think, one way forward is the way inward. This is a tried and true path, since the emergence of self-reflective consciousness, that there's something about the human person within that, in a sense, is what's forming the without. So, without a withinness and a deep interiority, which means really facing our own untruths within ourselves, dealing with the places that are, as we people speak quite often, that are dark, that are neglected, that are fearful. I think we have to come to that place of freedom from within ourselves. And I think the human person today is really longing for freedom, but is so afraid of freedom that they'd rather stay enchained to the untruths that we find ourselves in. And so we're so ambivalent, and we're kind of encapsulating ourselves in an entangled way that is unhealthy. And I think the way of mysticism, which the Aspen Chapel has wonderfully, focused on over the years, the way of centering, whether it's yoga, meditation, nature walking, whatever it is that centers us and liberates us. I think the question is, there's a self within a self within a self. And how do we get to the self that's really seeking to be itself in a world of unselves, that wants to unself us and create something that we're not? So I think it's really not that complicated, quite honestly, to attain a world of human flourishing and betterment. But it requires us to make choices, and that is, first of all, the choice for ourselves. And I think I think Jesus had a fundamental teaching: love yourself. It's so fundamental. Like, you can love everyone else, and we're always like trying to save the world, but how about trying to save yourself? So to save ourselves is really to liberate God from being some idol God to being a real God who's the God within us. And then to realize that if we're liberated from the unself self, that we liberate God, and that godly self then has a freedom and a power to do new things, to think new ways, to forge new boundaries, and not worrying about defending everything.
When you see the apparent selfishness that the country has voted for, what sort of pause for thought does that give you? And how can we um, get over the idea that we're taking a step backwards here?
Well, I think it appears backwards in some ways, but I think there's excessive greed for one thing. And I think excessive greed comes from deep existential fear of nothingness, quite honestly. And it's about power. It's about between nothingness and power. And so the idea that the more wealth, the more security I have, and the more power I have to control my life, to, control that what's around me. That is all an illusion, quite honestly. I mean, we could have a tsunami tomorrow, a major earthquake tomorrow or this afternoon, and all that power will be washed away or just completely eroded. So, that again is, but it is a concern, because what the concern is, for all the talk we have about ecology and relationships and interrelatedness, we are the most unrelated species alive on this planet. And so that's something we haven't really faced fully. Why is our deep, deep disconnectedness, in the face of all we know from science and all we know from psychology, why are we persistent in that deep disconnectedness and in that self rise to power, that kind of Nietzschean power, like to become little gods ourselves by this massive accumulation of wealth and power? And so, the election of Donald Trump, in my view, is precisely about wealth and power, and the preservation of it. It has nothing to do with, the earth community or, an ecological wholeness. That's so far from the minds of people. The truth is, we don't want to be related to anyone. We don't want to be related to the poor. We don't really want to see. We're not, it's not that we just don't care if the poor or the marginalized or the homeless are left out. They're just not in our world, in our scope of vision. We don't really care about immigrants. We don't care about the Mexican immigrants trying to come here for a better way of life. We'd rather keep them out because we're fearful, right, that they're going to be violent, that they're going to take our jobs, and all of this just says to us, we are the most unnatural species on the earth today. Is Homo sapiens, or the human person, and it's not going to last, quite honestly. We are on our way out of Homo sapien life, and how we will exit it, that's up for grabs right now. So I do think it is a concern, but we have to take hold of what we are. And the other thing is, I think we do need some kind of revolution. I mean, revolutions do work in some ways. I think we can't just stay individual. We need a collectivization of energies. That's how life actually works best, with the collectivization of energies. And we need to collectivize on a new level of consciousness and action.
What you're saying now is that that is the way that you can actually save Homo sapiens, by having a collectivized new energy that is not a political energy and is not a financial energy, but maybe is an energy of some sort of presence, some sort of understanding, some sort of wisdom. And that is what is going to fundamentally save humanity if we can get to that point.
Yeah, I think that energy is spirit. I mean, it's spiritual. And I think, one of the things is the way axial religions have, in a sense, they have divided us because they have become so tribalized and conflicted between each other, that they have created within us, mindsets of distinct ontological distinctions. So within Christianity, we have divisions among Christians and Jews and Muslims. We have divisions, and yet religion, it got really, I think we really lost sight of what religion's about. We lost sight that religion is a biological phenomenon and not some extraterrestrial or supernatural phenomenon. We lost sight that religion is to energize us, for our ultimate concerns. And spirituality is that spiritual energy for the zest of life. That's what it's to do for us. So I think the root cause of our problems actually is religion. And I think the only way forward is to rediscover religion in the 21st century. I mean, it really needs a serious, serious updating. It is so far behind, so stuck in outdated, outmoded, ancient doctrines and philosophies. And we keep insisting on these philosophies as, that which should guide us. And I'm saying they're helpful, but we can no longer allow them to be our primary guides. We need new philosophies, new guides, and new wisdom traditions, going forward. So, uh, yeah, so that would be my. We have what it takes potentially, but it's going to take some work.